activity. We're on.
Right, good afternoon everyone,
And welcome to our general meeting for the 27th of November. Councillors, I think in terms of our present councillors here today, we have an apology from Councillor Daniels, who previously applied for leave of absence. Would someone be happy to move Councillor Daniels' apology? Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Godwin Smith. All in favour? Against? Thank you. All right, councillors, any other leave of absence is required? All right, confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting, which was the 13th of November 2018, starting on page 3, the general council meeting. Someone that was present like to move those. Moved by Councillor Roll, seconded by Councillor Brimblestone. We'll just have a glean through those to see if there's any verses missed. Through to page 17, so. All right, councillor, that's attracted a move in a second. All in favour? Yes, thank you. Any business arising into those minutes? All good. All right, councillors, move on. Review of the outstanding meeting actions. And this was, and obviously those meeting actions were the 23rd of November. There's some updates there. Any questions, queries, or otherwise in there? All right, well, let's have a look at the upcoming agenda items there. Obviously, that's a little bit shorter. Obviously, toward the end of the year, and a little bit of a break there. That's certainly the some there for that last meeting. Anything else there? Nothing else you want to add to that? All right, councillors, let's move along. Right, councillors, so material personal interest, conflicts of interest, or personal gifts and benefits. Now, I'll start down the far end here. Councillor Syke.
Yes, option 1, I declare a conflict of interest as chair of the Central Highlands Science Centre in agenda item 11.1, I think it is.
11.3.
11.3. And I will be declaring with this, I will be dealing with this declared conflict of interest by leaving the meeting while this matter is discussed and voted on.
Thank you, Councillor Syke. So Councillor Syke made a declaration, she'll leave the room, so there's no determination about Councillor Syke needing to stay in the room. Thank you, Gav. Councillor Ross.
I declare a conflict of interest also in item 11.3 as president of the Springfield Show Society, and I take option 1 advise that I'll be leaving the meeting at that point. So thank you.
Right, so Councillor Rock has also made that same declaration in that same agenda item, she'll leave the room.
Just a question through the chair, that is 11.3 is only a report on the minutes, previous minutes, there's no voting.
There's recommendations there.
There is, so yes.
Yeah.
So therefore I declare under the same that I'll be declaring an interest, perceived or real, and I'll like to partake in that, but I will leave the room for recommendation if I'm allowed back in. Sorry, do you want me to read it? I don't know if I am.
No, sorry, your declaration, you're declaring that you'll leave the room.
Declaration 2.
Yeah, but he's doing option 2.
Yeah.
The reason, through the Mayor, Councillor, that you're declaring is?
It pertains to the same name as my own.
As current sporting facility that carries Councillor McIntyre. All right, so that's got to be now. I might have to make a declaration completely differently in relation to item 11.1. which is the development application there for a reconfiguration of lot. And I'll make that declaration under a perception of interest that I am in fact a beneficiary of a rural living subdivision previously, and I'll leave the room and not participate in discussion or voting on that matter. So that's 11.1. So here you go, Monday, all right?
Got it.
All right, excellent. All right.
So do I need,
No,
What?
through the mayor, this is the upfront, advice.
Is the
Councillors have seen the agenda and they're flagging what they have. If the councillor later realises as a report item rules by itself, or as the mayor is commencing discussions on that matter, you realise then that you have an interest, it's still okay to declare in. Thanks.
All right. So councillor, that's all right. I'll name give the benefits to the clear or something more like that. No, all good. All right. Okay, councillors, petitions, Mr. CEO, none received? None tabled. Excellent. Right, our first report, it will in fact be the item that I've just declared an interest in, so I'll ask Deputy Mayor Gale obviously to chair that particular part of the meeting. So that's in relation to development application of 11.1 Old Leeds Road.
You want to come up here?
And he's out. Well, I don't know what to do, do I? No.
You're not obligated to, but you
so
can see your councillor that you do.
11.1, the development application, reconfiguring a lot, two lots into two lots, Telfer Road. Rian is going to talk to this, isn't it? Ryan?
Yes.
Daniel, would you like to introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, the report before you, development application for reconfiguring two lots into three. This particular application triggered impact assessment, and you'll note in our recommendation that the recommendation itself is to refuse the development application based on the 6 grounds. Ryan's going to run through those grounds for refusal there and the details of the report.
Thank you, Daniel. My apologies for the delay. Good morning, Council. Good afternoon, Councillors, and good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. May I present to you the following development application? Through the Chair. Councillor Godwin Smith. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'd like to. This particular development application, RAL 009, was for reconfiguring two lots into three lots at Telfer Road in Emerald. Of land more formally described as Lot 5, SB 2433870 and Lot 1, SB 261441, and was lodged with Council for assessment in August 2018 and considered properly made in September 2018. It features a combined area and road frontage of 24.23 hectares and 1,036 metres respectively. It's broadly located within the Emerald locality, approximately 8.5 kilometres southeast of Emerald CBD and outside Council's defined growth boundary and trunk infrastructure service area. Under the planning scheme, both allotments are located within the rural zone and subject to planning scheme overlays including agriculture and bushfire hazard overlay. Being located within the rural zone and less than the minimum prescribed allotment size, the proposed development triggered impact assessment under the Planning Act and therefore public notification. Public notification of the proposal was undertaken by the applicant between and including the 12th of October and the 2nd of November this year, during which time nil submissions in support or objection were received. With regards to maintaining procedural fairness, it's noted that Council on 27th of September, as part of the information request, stated that for various reasons, the proposed development in its current form was unlikely to be supported, and that a partial refund of application fees would apply if the application material was withdrawn prior to lodgement of a formal information response. Nevertheless, the applicant elected to continue with the assessment, providing information response in October 2018. The proposed subdivision from the applicant, showed in the attached proposal plan, will result in approximately 0.4% of the minimum required allotment size for reconfiguring a lot within the rural zone. It conflicts with several important planning scheme provisions in assessment benchmarks, including the following. Number one, proposed development does not comply with all the planning scheme's strategic framework elements for growth management and land use planning, as well as land use strategies. The applicant seeks to further subdivide the existing land parcels into areas that commensurate more with rural residential style development and not for the purposes of rural uses. As such, the proposed development intends to further subdivide the existing land parcels outside council's identified growth boundaries in a manner that will result in an unorderly and out-of-sequence development of rural zoned land that will, for the time being, remain unsupported with the required trunk infrastructure. The proposed development, the proposed development does not comply with all the planning scheme agricultural overlay requirements and will lead to the further fragmentation of existing rural zoned land parcels, as well as loss of available rural land for vital rural production and farming flexibility, as well as an increased conflict between existing agricultural activities and future sensitive land uses. Number three, proposed development does not comply with relevant assessment planning benchmarks for bushfire hazard overlay and could result in an increased and unacceptable risk of loss of life and property due to the effects of bushfire on people and property. Furthermore, without provision of a site-specific bushfire hazard assessment, it's unclear at this stage how sufficient water supply pressures could be provided in order to ensure sufficient and reliable water supply for firefighting purposes across all allotments. Number four, the proposed development does not comply with all the relevant planning scheme assessment benchmarks for the rural zone code and will result in an increase in the number of people to be exposed to bushfire risk. Furthermore, insufficient evidence has been provided to adequately demonstrate that the proposed development remains within the broader interests of the community and that no other suitable site for the proposed subdivision in terms of its balance of social, economic and environmental considerations exists. And lastly, proposed development does not comply with relevant planning scheme assessment benchmark or the reconfiguring the lot code that requires a minimum of 2,000 hectares as a resultant lot size for reconfiguring within the rural zone. Instead, the largest proposed allotment size is approximately 0.4% of the minimum prescribed allotment size and incompatible with the prevailing character and density of development sought by the planning scheme for the rural zone. In summary, the proposed development will result in an out-of-sequence and out-of-character rural zone subdivision located outside council's identified growth boundary that will be unsupported by the necessary trunk infrastructure. The proposed subdivision will result in further fragmentation of existing good quality agricultural land that will further diminish the existing viability of the land for productive rural uses. The proposed development could also result in an increase of sensitive land uses and therefore an increased exposure of risk to loss of life and property due to the effects of bushfire hazard. Nevertheless, even if justification could be given in the context of neighbouring land parcels, more than sufficient rural residential zone land already exists within council's identified growth boundary for further subdivision. That would comply with the minimum required lot size and would result in an orderly and logical sequence of development adequately serviced with the necessary infrastructure. As such, it's requested that the council refuse development application RAL 009.1/2018 for reconfiguring the lot 2 lots into 3 at Talofa Road in Morgan, subject to the grounds outlined within the report. Thank you, Madam Deputy Chair.
Well articulated, right? You've spoke very well to the reasons outlined in the resolution there. Councillors, any questions for Ryan in relation to this one? No. Look, you've done an outstanding job. So move, Councillor Bell, second. Councillor Nixon, all in favour?
Unanimous.
Carried. How good is that? No, but I mean, look, out of curiosity, there's very compelling grounds in relation to a refusal of the application. Why would someone persist, even though that was so well articulated?
That's an excellent question. I have no idea when the information request time after time, point after point, clearly outlined that, these are and this was really a dot point kind of outline that's saying, look, it doesn't apply with this. likely to be done by with some
Yeah,
whatever. And yet they still proceeded to persist with it. Maybe they thought that, you know, they had a chance. I guess, I don't know. It's up for debate.
Anyway, it was a good gesture to offer a partial refund of some of the fees.
Absolutely.
In acknowledgement of that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just with applications like this that are quite contentious and go against the planning scheme, we do encourage people to have pre-lodgement meetings so we can essentially nip them in the bud and let them know exactly where we think we would go with the decision. The fact that they continue through the development application potentially gives them the grounds to lodge an appeal if they feel like they have grounds to overcome council's resolution. So there is that avenue that can pursue should see fit.
No, understood. Thank you very much, Ryan and Kirsten and Sarah. And let's get the mayor back in.
All right, councillors, next one is the development application report for an MCU on rural industry 3 to 7 Wills Road from Ricks Road Proprietary Limited. You're a rural team. All right, thanks. Kirsten, Sarah, Brian,
The applicant has proposed to redevelop an industrial property for the purposes of operating a rural industry from the site. The Wills Road site was developed in 2011 and operated as a landscaping supplies distribution centre. The new development proposes to use the existing warehouse and administration office. The only addition to the current built form is a series of 6 silos that will line up along the rear boundary. Product will be transferred from trucks to the interior of the warehouse via covered elevators and packed into 1 tonne or 20 kilogram bags for distribution to resellers and buyers. A rural industry definition means a premises used for storage, processing, packaging of products from a rural use and can operate from the rural zone. In this case, the premises is located in the industry zone and is therefore assessed as an impact application. 8 submissions were received during the public notification stage. The planning and environmental issues raised relate to potential impacts on air quality, noise disturbance, use of chemicals, traffic movements, and suitability of the location. Key matters have been addressed in the agenda report after seeking further information from the applicant. It is confirmed that the development will not be a receivable facility for the bulk handling of raw grain, similar to a grain corp. The applicant already deals with grain corp and farmers directly when buying raw seed that is trucked from silos and on farm to Gundawingi depot to be gravity graded, cleaned, treated and coated, ready to go into an air seeder or planter, or is manufactured into pellets for stock feed. The applicant has their own brand of seed and stock feed and wants to establish in this area. All traffic movements of both light and heavy vehicles will be on sealed areas within the site. The product will be transferred from the incoming trailers by covered belted conveyors rather than by augers. Dust emissions are therefore expected to be minimal. Conditions mitigating off-site impacts, including noise, dust and waste, have been included in the recommendation. And today it's recommended for approval.
any questions?
And augers less dusty than conveyors?
I guess augers, conveyors, they're just covered coming from the truck to inside the warehouse rather than like an open air auger. That's just, it's a cedar.
So, and obviously all those issues raised by the submitters were addressed, I guess, with them and responded to, I guess.
Yeah, the other ones, it was mainly about dust. Other ones included exploding silos. Too much dust in silos causes them to explode. The management of a facility in another shire owned by the same group has issues. It should be at Yamala. The applicant chose this site. It's connected to water and sewage. It's got roads that can receive road train, and it's ready to go. What else? So the exploding silos was when you fumigate grain in a silo, there won't be grain in these silos. But they've said that if they do need to fumigate, it be done by an expert in the field, that they usually noise, it's not expected to be noisier than any other industrial use. Unsuitability of the zoning, it is an industrial use, so it's well suited to the area. Traffic impacts, the roads are able to take a road train.
All right, well, councillors, the recommendation is there for approval, and it follows from page 35 through to page, the conditions relating to that go through to page 39, so there's 23 actual conditions there, I think, Sarah, correct? Yep. Does someone have any move those? Moved by councillor McIntyre, second by councillor Roll. All in favour? Against? Right. Councillor, this matter 11.3, councillor Syphon and councillor Roll have declared their interest and are leaving the room. But they don't have to leave the room. Yeah,
I've got to go, so this one,
so councillor McIntyre just needs us to make a determination regarding.
should that show the room?
So you need to leave, I think.
Sorry.
They're right.
They declared their interest in the, or opted to leave the room.
So all I'm worried about is the quorum left
It's okay.
to make a decision for me.
Okay, so for us to make this determination, you have to go, councillor McIntyre, for the time being. Yeah, tell you what, there's movement at the station, and it's up and down here. Yeah, this is the environment under which we live and operate. All right, councillors, well, councillor McIntyre, he's requested that we actually, that he'd like to participate in the discussion. So councillors, we need a mover, moved by councillor Godwin Smith. And would you like to read those words?
One moment. Have you got a copy of this one?
Option 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
So councillor McIntyre has a real conflict of interest in the matter, and accordingly,
The option 3 will be resolving a conflict of interest, that the councillor has a real perceived conflict of interest and notwithstanding the conflict. In this case, he may participate in the matter discussed and voted upon. I think that's the sentiment of the council.
That's it, that's
So councillor Godwin Smith moved
option 3.
that councillor McIntyre can participate in, as option 3 provides. We only need a mover, is that correct, Mr. CEO?
No, you need to second.
Second, someone like to second councillor Grillicombe, all in favour? All in favour, good, thank you. So that'll be 5-0. So councillor McIntyre moved. Just councillor McIntyre.
Yeah, he didn't need to come in. Wasn't it?
To get his thought.
Yeah,
Yeah, you must.
we'll vote against the next time.
Right. All right, so after movement, we now have the councillors that are eligible to be in the room, and we've determined accordingly. So, Daniel, if you'd like to lead off, please, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, councillors, this report is to provide to the General Council the Game Plan Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the 5th of November 2018. So at that meeting, as you can see, in the minutes, what was discussed was essentially a wrap-up, or almost a wrap-up, of the engagement process and what feedback had been sought from organisations at that time. The uniqueness to that meeting was there were a couple of issues that had come back through the engagement process, primarily around caretaker arrangements, and another request that had been sent through from the Springshaw Pastoral and Agricultural Society to resume a lease area on lot 11 CP 896640. So the recommendations there that have been provided are from the Game Plan Advisory Committee after discussing the matters, and they've noted that Council should review all current caretaker arrangements and work towards a more consistent approach. The Council reassess the responsibilities of each facility and ensure new contract aligns with the need of the facility. And after completion of this review process, tender the caretaker positions out for application. And further, in response to a request from the Springsure Pastoral and Agricultural Society to resume that lease, that the decision be postponed on the resumption of that lease until the 10-year framework is adopted and implemented by council. So the intention is for that 10-year framework to be before council on the 11th of December, and in the interim retain responsibility for maintenance of the proposed area and contribute funds to address the non-compliant facility elements. Happy to take any questions around those particular recommendations or any other advisory committee members wanting to provide context.
Just through the mayor, I see there you're going to actually align each caretaker arrangements with each facility, because each facility has different criteria. And just wondering about contracts for those positions. Are they 3-year, 5-year, or what were you contemplating?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that decision hasn't been made yet, or I'm not sure on what a tenure of that contract would look like. My advice on at this particular moment would be to bring that through the Game Plan Advisory Committee to have that discussion there and see what might be more value. At this stage, they're generally 3 years with options to extend, but and we may possibly maintain that, but I'm probably uncomfortable giving you an answer on that because unless we maintain that status quo.
That's a pretty normal thing, isn't it? 3 with the option.
Yes.
So Daniel, within the recommendation 1, 2 and 3, those are all to be discussed back through the Game Plan Advisory Committee and then come through to council.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. So the direction from the resolutions here would be that the organisation undertakes that review process for the caretaker arrangements and bring that information back to the Game Plan Advisory Committee.
Okay. And following, should this be supported today, would someone be pretty, contact Show Society fairly soon to let them know where we're at?
I suspect this afternoon, yes.
Okay, they're quite specific, but I mean, they're obviously getting the process worked through. We'll see a few of these, I think, gentlemen, as time goes by, I imagine. All right, was someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded. Councillor Godwin-Smith. So that's the 5 parts to that, 1, 2, 3, and further it's 4 and 5. They'll be moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Right. We attract councillors back to the chambers. Thank you, Joseph. All right, councillors, something we can all be here for. Page 62, the monthly financial report. Item 12.1. Thank you, Joseph.
Mr. Mayor, can I just sorry to take you back. I'm going to check with Marnie, but I just went through the minutes of the last meeting where I did ask for leave of absence and put you in your committee meetings. I won't be here for the council meeting next month. Just one month. So
the previous minutes?
Yeah. No, I just checked that. I have seek leave of absence from the governance committee meeting. Yeah. I didn't seek leave of absence for the council meeting. I won't be here now, so I just need leave of absence.
Yep. So leave of absence for Councillor Belford next council meeting. Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Belford. Godwin Smith and Nixon. Yep. Yep. All right to go. All right. Financial report. Thanks, Councillor Belford.
Finances.
Where to go?
Right, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, good afternoon. Presenting the monthly financial report for the period to the end of October 2018. I'll talk to the high level detail and then I'll ask Wayne to talk about the operating budget. So there will be some further commentary around the capital expenditure delivery and its performance later in the report. From the opening statements, you can see that council is generally online in its operating budget. The variance there of 9.4 versus $9.2 million in the operating position is well within tolerances. There are operating variances against both the revenue and expenditure, which we'll talk to a level of detail and I ask Wayne to do so in a moment. At a high level, council, I will recognise that we still retain that sound cash position, so you'll see net cash inflows into the organisation in September and March. So obviously we've had our rating periods for the year and it won't be until the first half of 2019 before we see additional rates and charges generated. The collection of outstanding rates continues to make progress, but obviously there's more work that we can do there, and we received a report last month about advancing 57 properties towards the sale of land process. Wayne, I might ask you to talk about those variances in the operating revenue and expenditure before I start.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the variances at this point are not sort of considered to be a high risk for the majority of areas. There's a couple of them that are related to the level of activity around the recoverable works, particularly like the Springwood Road project, and there's delays in both expenditure and revenue for that. Potentially, the operating grants and subsidy also not considered to be a risk. There is a potential risk around the rates capping due to the actual cap being a little bit higher than what was forecast. That came about through a slight change in the formulas to calculate the caps in the way the rates were applied this year versus previous years. But we'll be monitoring that as part of a budget review to determine whether we need to look at making an adjustment to the overall forecast. But I mean, in general terms, there's not a lot of risk around the variances from the revenue. Looking at the expenditure, the employee costs are currently running within the range. There's vacancies in a number of positions. Sick leave is a little bit higher on a pro rata basis, but that's probably a seasonal factor because of the winter period. And in general terms, people are either at work or they're sick, but we've budgeted for the whole lot anyway. So any additional sick leave is likely to be offset by a reduction in ordinary time. The only area there that's of some potential concern is around the overtime. And again, some of that may have been a seasonal factor, and so we'll be monitoring that on an ongoing basis. A lot of the other variances relate to, as I said, offsets to some of the expenditure areas for the recoverable works around the Yamala siding project, the Springwood Road project, and it's some of them are funded externally and or through grants. So there's not a lot of risk around that in the long term.
Is that month a 3 pay month too?
No, I think 3 pay month was September or August. So I don't know that October was 3 pays.
Was that not fair end, isn't it?
So there's not a huge risk around that.
I got paid twice, so that's okay. Are they online?
But, with the cash flow, as Rachel indicated, the general periods of influx relate to the timing of the rates. This year, because we staggered the water notices, there was a slight additional increase in revenue through that October, or cash flow through that October period, and flowing into November with the timing of the water rates, separate from the rest of the council rates. But, and that's why it had dropped down a fraction and now it's boosted back up again. But that's part of the normal cycle. And with the capital works program and the carryover projects, we're still forecasting a significant reduction in cash through to the 30th of June anyway. So, there's the pre-sale warning notice letters have been sent out to ratepayers. So there's, I think, 59 letters being done. And that's a combination of standard properties plus commercial properties. So they'll be going out. Of course, the normal collection, council's debt collection policy. And so we're continuing to monitor all significant variances for potential budget adjustment of BR2. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, those letters, haven't they gone out as yet?
They're either have gone out or they're in the process of going out now.
Okay, so no results as yet.
No.
Just a question through the chair. In the total arrears showing in the spreadsheet, is that incorporating water?
Yes.
It does?
Yes.
No, through you, Mr. Chair. You'll see on page 66, the last sentence, the balance does not include the first half separate water levy.
Yep.
So that didn't conclude until November. So 2 weeks after those rates were due is when we then deem them, I suppose, outstanding and they go into arrears there.
So there is a potential
that will increase as a result of unpaid water rates at this point in time. So that's really a timing issue into the accounts for the period ended October.
So will we start seeing it in this format as a separate column, or will it be still in total?
It's probably going to be in the total, but we can certainly try and pull that information out. And
No,
show it
we're billing separately. The community is paying into two separate. So it just makes sense to me that we see, that there may be a concentration on rates and not a concentration on water, and we need to identify that going forward. I think so. I think if we separate that, it may be beneficial as we go forward.
Can be done or incorporated into the next report.
So they were due on the 13th of November. Have you got any idea roughly what had come in on time?
I don't have those figures to hand, Councillor. I thought it's if we can circulate those out of session for council in terms of what the outstandings from those have been. A lot of that's been collated now in terms of the reporting processes for the end of that water cycle. If I can, councillors, I'll go on to talk about the capital expenditure and draw some explanations around the figures that you see in front of you. I'll reference a few tables in the first instance. So on page 68 is the normal summary against each department, which shows an actual expense of about $15.4 million as actual expenditures against the adopted budget of 98.1 as that budget review number 1. The graph below that indicates what the monthly forecast cash spend has been against the capital activity, and it shows really an underperformance where in October we had scheduled ourselves to spend $8.4 million and we had only spent 4.1. But if you look at the following graph on page 69, you can see the accumulated forecast there was 19.1 million against the 15.4 that we have undertaken to date. So what I wanted to do is provide some further commentary and analysis around those three tables that I've referred to so far to try and give you an understanding of how those variances occur in terms of the cash flows that have been forecast and what the actual expenditure tends to be for the period. So rather than looking at any of the graphs in isolation, it's probably about looking at all of those, and then probably you'll see on the screen now us layering in another, I suppose, tool that indicates the progress being made for the capital expenditure. So the delivery of projects isn't necessarily something that can be broken into a linear activity. It's not as easy as saying you take an annual figure and divide it by 12 and that represents the sum total of what we should see. And the easiest example for me to demonstrate that is against the reseals program that's scheduled in the forecast roadworks program. So the reseals activity, I think it's around about $2 million this year. will be spent probably in a period of about 6 to 8 weeks for the whole year. So you'll see that expenditure all come in over a concentrated period of time. That particular activity is a high cost activity, and so those expenses flow through straight away. So rather than seeing, portions of those flow through during the year, they happen all in a concentrated time. And a lot of the capital projects are very similar to that. So what you see on the board on the screens now is really an interpretation of a new dashboard that we've created that will allow us to map against the individual projects and how they're being progressed. Make this an interactive activity. So project progress runs across the bottom here. So that's the cash flow that you've seen before. So focusing on this month, obviously there's an underperformance of 4 versus 8 there. What I want to do is forecast here that you'll see these are the projects by progress stage, I suppose. So at the end here, we've got not commenced $18 million of activity for the year. We have the big bulk of the middle here, that $55 million currently in construction. There's one here that we've completed in terms of our work to date, and you can see that there is $11 million worth of projects in design and $13 million worth of projects in planning. So we are getting much more into this chunk of construction than you might have seen before, but that doesn't translate easily into the cash flows that we'll forecast at the start of the year. So as has been discussed with some of the general managers, but not all now, is that recasting the cash flow on a monthly basis, and then that will give us a much cleaner projection of how that information will flow forward, and being able to see, how many projects sit inside each of those buckets of money is also giving you an indication of the status of each of those individual projects. Now, this graph that Lord's got up there, that's for the whole program. So for the $98.1 or $2 million, you can see in terms of the cash flow, we're about 81% of the way there. If I just ask you to bring up the next one, Lord, that's the top. So these are the top 20 projects, the top 21 projects or so. You can see by value there. Again, the lion's share is in that construction phase at the moment, representing $49 million. And you can see that the top 21 projects represent $70 million out of that proposed $98 million that's been forecast. So, and again, there's 5 in planning, 7 in the design phase, and I suppose what we're focusing on is the $9 million or so that haven't commenced yet, and where those projects are at in terms of their planning and how they might advance. So we will provide this level of detail going forward so we can map the current cash flow predictions against the projects and the progress that they're making. One of the reasons I'm showing you those particular graphs is when I go over the page onto, there's a new traffic light report there on page 70 of the agenda, and you'll see the performance shows red, green or amber. So what this reporting tool does is it has every project underneath it that rolls up into those areas. So the traffic lights come when we don't meet the cash flow thresholds that we forecast in there, or there haven't been actual expenditures going forward. So it's really measuring what our actual expenditure to date has been. And again, you can see from that, in those top 21 projects, we're a little bit behind because we're only 65% of the way through that cash flow cycle for what we forecast at the moment. I suppose what I'm trying to give you an impression of is there is a level of variability to what we're doing at the moment. But if we look at not just the financial performance, but the project's stage in its progress in construction, we can give you a better representation of the status of the particular projects, which aren't just represented by dollars and cents in a cash flow basis. Does that make a bit more sense in terms of the performance today? And if I just refer to that table on page 70, you'll see there is a mixed bag of results there, but generally it does show that we are behind by 19% now on where we scheduled ourselves to be as at the end of October. So as we present the information going forward, there'll be a revised cash flow decided each month in advance, and then we'll map those cash flows against the actual expenditures that occur during the time. Since the report for the end of October has been produced, there's certainly been a lot of activity in bringing on board a number of purchase orders and increased activity. So council signed off on those tenders around the NDRRA, so those commitments are now locked and loaded into the figures that are shown as the forecasted and committed expenditure. And so what I've tried to demonstrate there is the dashboard will show you a cleaner representation of the project's progress, but it will also be able to give us the ability to show individual projects and particularly having a look at those top 20 projects in a bit closer layer of detail, either through the committee structure or into the strategic briefing forums of the council. So, is there any questions in relation to the capital expenditure? Have I been able to articulate that clearly enough?
Just through the mayor and referring back to yesterday, the list of deferral of works that was mentioned. Is there a list, or what ones are being dropped out?
Does that refresh my memory about the context of that, Councillor Nixon?
All I wrote down was ask about the list of deferral of works.
There was a comment made in the workshop yesterday.
Yep.
Around the lack of maturity of projects, and through there was reference drawn to the dashboard style report the GM Communities produced for a recent committee meeting. The term was used.
Yeah.
So I was just a bit concerned as to what we're dropping out.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, for prompting me. Probably down here in the not-convinced projects are things that we don't have a level of detail around at this point in time. So rather than deferral, the work that we're doing now is looking at any of the projects that haven't commenced and what their level of maturity has been. And as the CEO referenced yesterday in our discussions, the getting a sense of what that maturity score looks like before projects go into the budget going forward will certainly be a key aspect of the 1920 budget preparation. But you can see, Arun, if you just take it back to the full project list, it's looking at, there's $18 million in that bucket of not commenced projects here, getting a sense of what's in there and what's the deliverability of those individual projects.
It'd be nice to know what is in there, just like so that we're not dropping out something that's really vital to us moving ahead.
And I can bring a layer of detail back on that next month, Councillor Nixon, so that it's a bit more interactive.
No, thank you.
Councillor Roll.
Through you, Mayor. Jason, so the red dots on here would add up to the $18 million. Is that about right?
Not necessarily. It'll add up to the incomplete cash flows at this point in time, which some of would be referenced by projects that are in train but haven't progressed to the level that they should have. But the statement is true, some of that would be represented by non-delivery at this point in time.
I think through the mayor, following on from a conversation we had recently at a workshop with Mr. Greg Hoffman from Grassroots. I think the high-level reporting is excellent, and there's a need for some of the granular information around the status of the 300 projects. Noting that we rightly are focusing on the top 10, 11 projects, or those that represent about $70 million, but that expectation is real around the delivery of some of the lesser projects for the smaller quantities of budget. So I guess to complement this new style of reporting, and if I compliment the GM for this initiative, it would be also good to have a level of granular detail around expected time frame for commencement of some of those smaller projects. So we've got a good firm handle on the total CapEx picture for the financial year. I think we need it. And just to build on that, Mr Mayor, certainly you'll see a much sharper reporting around the Works for Queensland projects as well that aligns with what we've just demonstrated there against those individual dashboards, so you can see at a project level where each of those initiatives is actually tracking, given that that work's due by June next year. In closing out, presenting the report, Mr Mayor, I'll just touch on that procurement spend for the month. Whilst it's represented 47% of the eligible spend there, just under $3.5 million spent inside the council district. And again, a lot of the lower value and purchase orders raised for more of the consumable activities is happening at a local level rather than from outside the region. And interesting to see those comparisons to what was presented in our workshop earlier today by the resources sector and their local spend against council's local spend. The reports there as is, Mr Mayor, happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Just a quick one as per normal, mate. I'm just looking at the employee costs and the vacant positions, and should those positions, we would certainly not be seeing what we're seeing here. And is that an offset of the overtime? What safety implications if people are, if that balance is because of the amount of overtime people are doing? Are we, we're managing our safety well enough there, and are we looking at filling these positions? I'm just concerned. It's very close to the line, and I know we've got a lot of vacancies.
So a couple of questions, a couple of answers there, Councillor McIntyre. So the first one, you can see the performance is just under 600,000 under budget at this point in time. Now, that graph's a representation of the operating budget only. It's not the total wages for the whole organisation. So work that's been undertaken in the capital sphere isn't represented in there. The commentary in relation to overtime tracking above, I suppose, the trended position at this point in time is certainly something that we're looking at in terms of managing that from a health and safety perspective. I will be supported by my other general manager colleagues here in the basis that I don't think there are any threats to there are no threats to the workplace health and safety issues associated with work that we're currently undertaking. We are, in answering the third part of your question, we're actively working on the vacancies and filling those vacancies at the moment. We're seeking to put additional resources in there to accelerate that. Of recent times, there's been a trend in the organisation where there's been a number of internal placements. So an internal opportunity becomes available, we get applicants from inside, we fill that internal opportunity, and another internal opportunity opens up in another part of the organisation. So that doesn't bode well in terms of the statistical information that you see, but we're actually filling the positions as we work through the organisation. That's just not clearly represented in the overall vacancies that we currently hold. Anyone else want to make a comment on that?
If I can, through you, Mr Mayor, just to support Jason on the safety aspect of vacancies, while some of our capital projects, you may have seen a delay in the commencement of those projects, there's no connection with any vacancy rates as to the delay of any of those projects on. So pretty comfortable saying that, but there's also no safety implications that we're aware of, or no risk to any safety based on our vacancy numbers at this stage.
Any other questions? All right, Councillor, do you have a recommendation on page 62 that the Central Highlands Regional Council received that monthly financial report for the period ended 31st of October 2018? Have you moved it? Moved by Councillor Brindlecombe. Is that you, Councillor Brindlecombe? Yes, it is. Second, Councillor Roll. Sorry, young looking man there. Councillor Brindlecombe. I it was. Been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Thank you. With your indulgence, Mr CEO, I might drag this later agenda item before we get to your CEO's reports. Are okay? Of course it is. We might just deal, since Chris Dewson is in the room and we're dealing with Councillor, draw your attention to the late agenda item, the first one, which was corporate services, which was amendment and adoption standing orders policy. Councillors would have had that uploaded on Docs on tab. You'll cover it now, Jason, okay?
Yes, most definitely.
Thank you, Chris.
I'll support Chris through the introduction and then we'll be happy to take some answers. Councillors, apologies for the late report, but we had been pending legal advice, and this isn't a matter that's not been seen by council before. So following our recent workshops and the presentations around changes that have resulted from the CCC investigation and the Belcara or Operation Belcara report, you have in front of you amendments to the Standing Orders Policy, a new investigations policy, a repeal of a local law, and also, for completeness, the inclusion of the Model Code of Conduct into those suite of documents. Now, each of those are requirements to have in place with the assent of the legislation being 3rd of December 2018. The recommendation seeks to bring those documents into life, and we have, in a version that you should have been sent as well, track the changes that have been made in those individual documents to show what's happened as a result of us considering and addressing the changes in the model standing orders that had been proposed through the state government. I'll ask Chris to add a layer of detail to this, but Council has been well served by a comprehensive standing orders policy at the moment that has been enacted and is actively used by the organisation. It meant that looking at the model standing orders, there are very little mechanical changes that need to be made. But if I might just hand over to you now, Chris, to talk council through some of those changes and some of the points of interest that might be in the other documentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. We'll start with the meeting procedures. It's probably the one that's had the most changes to it, and there's more flexibility of council to be able to consider possible clauses for inclusion or exclusion there. Just to further what Jason was saying, we've our existing standing orders were fairly comprehensive. It was a very comprehensive document. In fact, the model that was put out by the state some 6 months ago pretty well mirrored our existing standing orders, just some minor changes to it. At the end of the day, in the model, you had to actually amend your standing orders to incorporate those changes so there was no conflict. That exercise wasn't particularly difficult from our point of view, apart from being a messy housekeeping procedure. Yet the actual integrity of the existing document hasn't changed too much whatsoever. There's a few provisions in there that I'd like to go through though, where there has been changes. The model that the department puts out doesn't touch on committee structures, it doesn't touch on membership of various committees. Our standing orders do. So what we're proposing is to continue to include those provisions in the standing orders. If you look at page 7 of the document, you'll see the existing committee structure of finance and infrastructure, communities and leadership and governance. It also lists there the actual business items will go to each of those committees. In yellow there, you'll notice that I've made a few comments there simply for the sake, I suppose, maybe thought bubbles, just to sort of get some feedback from the council as to whether or not they wish to consider that content and see if it is going to an appropriate committee. And by means of observation, I'll just say that we've got corporate communications, I think at the moment, going to leadership and governance. Daniel's raised the fact that he thinks that's probably more appropriate to go into communities. That's not reflected in the paperwork in front of that's only came about in the last few hours. Organisational development and human resources, we're proposing to put that in leadership and governance. At the moment, it's over in finance and infrastructure. Workplace health and safety at the moment reports to leadership and governance, but I don't know that it's actually mentioned elsewhere in the existing structure, so we'll have to formalise that. The land development, I'll stand corrected here, but I understand that to be planning and development, as in DAs and town planning, in which case I thought at the moment it fits in Daniel's portfolio of communities. Not? No, okay, that's what I mean, I wasn't sure of that one. So land development relates to?
Infrastructure.
Okay. As I said, there were 4 bubbles only. Customer service, I'm not sure where that currently fits.
It's not listed, I believe, so it doesn't need to be listed as significant.
Okay.
So probably communities, I think, where it should sit.
I guess my overriding comment there was that the existing departmental structure doesn't mirror the committee structure. And I know that's a conscious decision of the council.
That's correct. My portfolio is split over all 3 standing committees.
Yeah, that's through the mayor. That's something that people struggle with, Chris, and council wanted to revisit that in the future. It could, but those committee roles were set up more around extrapolating and interpreting the legislative responsibility that councillors have and trying to put that into appropriate committees, and it deliberately didn't respect the organisational structure. Some councils do it differently and they gear up their committees around their department or their department structures. We didn't do that. That is a very important point for people that weren't around, I guess, when it was created. There is a dialogue that supports why it was done that way before they were created.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Scott. I just raised as a point when I was going through that I was just trying to
fair comments
there. I guess then the final one that I had there was, this is probably more significant than the others, is finance. It goes to finance and infrastructure is the name of the committee, but I thought it was more leadership and governance. But appreciating the comments you just made, that we wouldn't be tinkering with the actual structure. There were simply observations as I was going through the process. The other modifications are reasonably minor, except as I mentioned in the report, at the moment when the meeting is closed to the public, the current standing orders provide that all officers leave the chamber. As I say in my report, I'm not familiar with that haven't actually seen that beforehand. And normally, in my experience, the executive remain in the chamber, and they also, unless of course it's a matter of remuneration or discipline, in which case they're asked to leave, that's the discretion of the chair. Because there's no flexibility in the existing standing orders, what I proposed is that those executive members remain in the chamber unless the chairman decides otherwise, rather than the default as is now is that everybody leaves. So I just want to point that out. And so, food for thought, I suppose. Yeah,
there we tend to add the words excluding those directly involved in those reports. So what you say is quite right, but the chair usually directs that only those executives that need to be retained should stay.
Okay, well, I'm going to go from what I'm reading in the standing orders. So.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And I also propose that the manager of governance sit in those meetings too, which will probably come more evident later on. We'll talk about some of the changes as a result of integrity policies. But again, that could be done on a case-by-case basis. I don't think there's any other significant changes. As Jason said, there was also circulated a dirty copy, if you like, of all the changes. It's very cumbersome to use. It's all colour-coded, but essentially a lot of the stuff was syntax and just there wasn't any change to the nuts and bolts of the standing orders at all. As I say, ours are more comprehensive than the model that's produced by the state. And I'm looking at it in detail. I'm pretty confident the state's model. They may use our standing orders as a model to develop their own. That way. That's the first component of it. The second component is the conduct of meetings policy, meeting procedure policy. As Jason mentioned, coming out of Operation Balcara and other CCC reports of recent times, there's been a requirement to review some of the procedures surrounding council meetings. I know the council's had workshops with the state back on October 22. Previously with Tim Feinsmith from King & Co. So you're quite familiar with what was proposed there. The models themselves only came out in the middle of November. They were finalised. We have to basically adopt the meeting procedures whole as poles. So what we're proposing to do is incorporate those in the standing orders. Also effective the 3rd of December, whether or not the council resolves about it whatsoever, from the 3rd of December, the Code of Conduct of Councillors will apply to all councils in Queensland. We have no discretion in that regard. So simply again, from a housekeeping point of view, we suggest that we include it in the standing orders. It's one document, then we can see it at a glance that all those documents relate to the conduct, operation of meetings. We don't have any ability whatsoever to tinker with that particular provision about the Code of Conduct. It has to be adopted in its entirety. As I say, if we don't adopt it, it applies irrespective by virtue of state regulation. So there's that component of it there. In going through this exercise, it became clear that there was a legacy local law that was adopted back in 2008 when the amalgamations occurred, and it was a procedural one which most Queensland local governments did, where it provided some meeting procedure to default to a standard, if you like. it's been lost in time. I don't think everybody even realised it even existed. It's only a very basic one about a basic provision about meeting conduct. I don't think it's ever been used, to my knowledge here, but it needs to be repealed. That's the final provision I've got in there. In fact, it can't exist in conjunction with existing ones anyway. So the recommendation is that we go through the repealing process, but because it's an existing local law, it has to get a resolution of the council, go through a process that we advertise and say we're repealing it. That's probably, the final component is the investigations policy. Again, everybody would be familiar with that requirement. It's a statutory requirement to have an investigations policy. This model was produced by the state in conjunction with King & Co. I've spoken extensively with King & Co. The view is that we should adopt it in its entirety. We have in this case here, that's the recommendation here today. I don't have anything further out in that regard, so I'm happy to take any questions or provide any clarification necessary.
Probably worthwhile adding, Mr. Mayor, in relation to that code of conduct, we have organised for Greg Hoffman, Grassroots Connections on duties, to carry out body of work to improve that document for us. For now, what Chris is proposing, we don't really have the option but to accept the state departmental created model, and then after Greg completes his work with council, he'll set to work in looking at our soon-to-be out-of-date code of conduct for councillors, as well as this model that we're about to adopt, and putting something together that represents something that CHRC can own, and that will incorporate the types of things that councillors wish to see in there, as well as the fundamentals that must be in there. And then we'll have a document that's specific to how we do things in CHRC. So that's a body of work that I don't believe will be completed until early next year. But for now, I certainly, provided this gets support here, I have no doubt that it won't, encourage councillors to read that document and familiarise themselves with the obligations contained within it.
Well, questions, councillors, there's a fair bit in this.
We've got it now. And there's change, sorry?
We have to do it later.
If there's further changes come December 3rd, isn't that when
No, the code of conduct and the meeting procedures will apply on December 3, even if council does another one. They will apply across the state.
Yeah.
You can't tinker with them. So we're just trying to incorporate with the one document for ease of reference for everybody. There's not a lot of, well, there's no flexibility on those.
No.
There is now standing orders proper, and we go over and above what the model is there, but the other ones we can't even, we can't tinker with.
All right. So moved by Councillor Rickle currently, the recommendation that relates to those three issues raised by Chris articulated.
Yes, as we discussed it. Just clarifying, that those amendments that was made on the run before we considered the standing orders need to be incorporated in that resolution.
So that's finding an appropriate location for each of those. That's all. Do you want to do that here?
Well, I thought we had done it.
Yeah, I think I understand what you've done there.
So they've done, right?
All right, council, in there, draw your attention to, the clause 50 of the standing orders. And Chris, this is another amendment that will be required. It's reference to the executive leadership team members. So it says council officers' participation at meetings in addition to the CEO and minutes secretary. Meetings of the local government are attended by subsection A, subsection 1A. The executive leadership team members of, it says organisational services will need to change that to corporate services, or that should be corporate services. And then communities, instead of communities in development, infrastructure utilities is okay, and regional customer services. And then you're proposing there the manager of governance. So, and remember there, the name references. And then it goes on to say, if council's happy with that if the council resolves that the meeting be closed to the public, the above officers may remain in the meeting unless determined otherwise by the chairperson. And I think we're happy with that protocol. We've had it in place for a couple of years now. Any other officers shall be required to leave the meeting unless determined otherwise by the chairperson.
Just, something through the mayor, just, on page 12, division 5, there's a section in 15 on the next page, it says the mayor is ex officio. Wouldn't it be better in putting that over under division 5? It's just kind of an add-on there about membership.
On page 12?
Yeah, page 12, where you've got the chairperson, and then I just thought under that it should be, should the chairperson not be present at a meeting, then the meeting shall elect a chairperson, should be there. And because it's stuck in there with membership, you've got in there that the mayor is an ex officio member of the committee, but it just looks a bit strange that that other sentence is in there. I just thought it would have been better, more appropriate under division 510.
Is that the way our standing orders fit now? Is that the same framework?
It is. It definitely needs to be where it is. I'm just contemplating what you're saying about maybe re-representing it again somewhere under division 4. Oh, it definitely needs to be where it is in division 6, subsection 15. Chairperson, forum, procedure. I don't believe so, Councillor Nixon. We're quite happy for Chris to ask the question.
What clause are we looking at? My page is not.
Clause 15, where it says membership.
Yeah, okay.
Underneath the members for each of the committees, it says the mayor is ex officio. That needs to stay there. What Councillor Nixon's proposing is that there should be some reference to the mayor being ex officio, an ex officio member of each committee under division 5.
It was actually the next sentence I thought should have been on this 5.
Should the chairperson not be present at the meeting, then the meeting shall elect the chairperson.
Yeah, that's the part I
Oh,
thought should have been
that's
under
it.
chairperson.
Okay.
But I think the mayor probably stuck down there under that thing, doesn't look really.
Well, there's no reason why we can't accommodate that.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it.
That's it. So the amendments we've made are in relation to clause 14, which is the types of matters that are dealt with by each committee. Now, I think we've got clarity on that. Is anyone unclear about what changes we're making there? Okay. 50, we talked about before. Division 5, we will add in one of those sections that comment about the chairperson not being present, then the meeting shall elect the chairperson. I don't know if there's any other amendments. Is there any other amendments, Chris?
No, I don't think so.
What we'd be proposing there is that the recommendation is supported. It will only need to accommodate the wording as amended.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Riddle, are you happy to move that with the words as amended? Including the motion?
So can I just clarify, are we happy with the proposed provisions about closed meetings or?
What we've been doing today through the meeting is that when we close the meeting, we've been tipping everyone out except those GMs that need to be there, or third level managers that need to be there for that item only.
So you're happy with the wording and that's just the way you're going to apply it?
Well, do you see any challenges with doing it that way?
No, because at the end of the day, it's the chairman's discretion.
Yes.
I don't see an issue.
And if the chairman doesn't exercise
Then they
discretion,
remain.
then they can remain, including the manager or coordinator of governance.
Yeah, under that proposal.
And I think council was happy with that through the meeting. That gives discretion.
Just as we do it now.
It is as we do it now, if the chair exercises that role. If the chair doesn't say anything, then The ELT would all stay in the room for whatever the matter is, along with the manager or coordinator of governance. That's what would happen. It gives autonomy to the chair. At the moment, we've been quite consistent in picking everyone out except only those people that need to be in the room. Yeah. And look, if something's not working, you don't want to check. If you want to leave it as it is now, that's fine. If you want to change the track, you can.
I think you do that one, that's it. All right. Councillor Whitcomb, are you happy with that? Right, so it's been moved. Is someone happy to second that? Second the changes? No. Seconded by Councillor Robb. It's extremely detailed. The clock was on, there was no review period. Okay, so we've had a mover and a seconder. So that's for the recommendation for those three changes as amended. All in favour? Against?
I think it was unanimous.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your perseverance.
No worries.
Thank you. All right, councillors, back to our agenda. We'll go to now the CEO's report, which is on page 81. It relates to the LGAQ conference.
How long have we got, Mr. Mayor?
Under those standing orders, 30 seconds.
Take your reports, Rick.
There you go, happy to answer the questions.
No, I think appropriately having reflected such a copious amount of notice and you being hit the high points or?
Yeah, well, I'll hit the high points. So just start by acknowledging that the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councillors Rolfe, Brimblecombe, Nixon and myself represented CHRC at the recent LGAQ annual conference, which was held at Brisbane from the 29th to 31st of October. Up front at the start of the report in italics, I write that there's a number of potential opportunities for CHRC, if possible, so it may not be today. I'd like councillors to discuss these and others more that we can appropriately glean learnings from this conference to benefit our communities. Views from councillors are important to understand the collective priorities, to therefore manage the change adoption rate or focus areas at CHRC. Lovely photo there. The Mayor and I had the pleasure of visiting Government House at a function hosted by the Governor, Paul Jersey, and his wife Kate Jersey. And I'll get into the detail now. Councillor Rolfe and I attended a local government Sherlock Living Lab, which I'll talk about in a little bit of detail. Councillor Hayes attended a sport workshop, and Councillors Nixon and Goldman Smith attended professional development, and they may wish to make comment about their experiences. For now, local government Sherlock is a process for analysing big data and interpreting it to inform better decision making. So big data can reveal patterns, trends and associations, enabling the inquirer to access new insights. I'll flip over, so I'm not going to go through it all. I'll just mention that, I'll just mention quickly Chris Rose has a role with seeing LG's Sherlock implemented successfully by being an interface with practitioners to make sure that LGAQ get it right as they package up a product that they will ultimately market to their members. Energy and fleet are the two pilot projects which will be developed to product stage. Very soon we'll be requested to consider sharing our data, and I believe that that's something that should be discussed in this boardroom. I think it's a decision that council should make. I'm not suggesting that we wouldn't support that, but I don't think that we should take the liberty of just entering into an agreement without having that discussion at the boardroom table. Ultimately, LGAQ will be able to use our data to create a value proposition for the industry, and we should enter into that full knowledge. That graphics there is quite interesting. It's hard to read. The little bubbles on the left-hand side are saying what the rate was in 2013, and then some 4 years later, when the 2017 digital productivity report was released, you can see it's grown quite considerably. So councils that have systems in place to collect data, that's grown from 22% to 82% in 2017. Councils that agree that data is a critical asset has grown from 61% to 88%. and councils that are using data to improve performance has grown from 40% to 48%. So the point being that the take-up rate isn't where it needs to be, or councils are not leveraging the data that they collect as effectively as they could. A couple more stats at the bottom of the page. The 77 councils in Queensland combined deliver a total of $12 billion in operational expenditure. If you flip over the page, you'll see there that the comparative spend drawn that if you aggregate Suncorp, Horizon and the tax group, the local government sector is as big as those three massive companies. So the opportunity is for the sector to leverage its data to create opportunities. There were 3 demonstrations delivered in this workshop. One was the Energy Detective, and that'll be a product that's available eventually, Fleet Doctor. And the third one was about the Ready Set Go tool, where data on the performance of local governments will be provided to the public. And this is something that I think is quite exciting. This is data at the moment that a journalist or someone that was investigating the performance of councils could obtain, although it would take time to do so through existing public reports or agencies. This is the first time it's putting it into one spot in it, and with an accompanying tool that you can compare your council to another council, or your council to a group of like councils, or your council to a completely different category of councils, so that you can see how they perform. It does say at the bottom of that section that participation is optional, and again, I believe that's a decision that council needs to make. While I might be overly excited about sharing that data with the public, you may not be. It's a decision that needs to come from the boardroom, because our data will no doubt yield results that are favourable and impressive, and other councils will want to know why we're doing things so well. And in other cases, there'll be some challenging data that's hard to explain why we may be off the mark when looking at other councils and how they do things. The sell, I suppose, or the positive is that councils that participate get to put a disclaimer on their data sets, aka a justification for why the data says what it says. So the inquirer then can take that on board when they're discerning a viewpoint from that data. So by December 2018, an opportunity will exist for councils to consider their participation in these 3 products. LGAQ will fund LG Sherlock for the first couple of years. Beyond that, it's expected that the initiative will generate a return on investment. Regardless, though, the intention is that a base level of value will exist for all councils in Queensland. Over the page, you can see with Fleet, you can see the many existing data collection points. And then the next graphic shows the information that can help fleet owners make decisions. And then there's one more image which is quite impressive. This is rendering or using creative visualisation to facilitate decision making. In this case, you can't read what is in the bubbles, but what it is, it's the orange bubbles are showing your high cost plan. So in a snapshot, you could look at that big orange bubble and you could ask questions about why is this piece of plant or machinery costing what it's costing, or why is it performing so poorly. So you're able to make decisions rather than see that line not hidden, but obviously not standing out in a report that is linear or many line items. So rendering is a way that you can tap into, I put left, I should have said right, tap into that right creative hemisphere of your brain, so it will trigger, I suppose, questions to facilitate decision making. I've written down some opportunities for CHRC. Again, the offer is, I think we should discuss these, perhaps not now, but at a time in future. I think we can utilise the existing data we have more effectively. We could start by incorporating appropriate data into our current decision-making processes. At the moment, we don't do that. We do it from time to time, but we could regularise that so that it was a part of our decision-making reports to provide basic information on the existing data we have to complement the report. We could start by considering what data sets we have, how it can be rendered and visually presented to stimulate creative thinking. We could collect more data especially if it's automatic or costless. And a simple example was, if you think of the foot traffic associated with parkrun, you could have a sensor like we do when you enter a library building, for example, to get an idea of how many customers you have. You could easily work out how many people are crossing the footbridge. And they're things that don't cost much to set up. So you can start to build this data, even when you don't know that you might use it in future. Well, I suppose you know that you'll use it in the future, but you don't know how. And I guess that's the point. We can share appropriate data with our communities. I think that's a good one, even though we may not know how we wish to use the data, making it publicly available, certain data sets at least. There's people in our communities, organisations that may be able to use that data. Consider authorising access by LGAQ to council's data and acquiring additional traffic counters and employing a data collection strategy. We talked about this before and it's very, very important. And likewise, cooperating with the state government to share data. We give them our data, they provide the data for traffic volumes and usage on their TMR network. We then moved into the Regional Roads and Transport Group Assembly that was attended by the Mayor, Councillor Lolf and myself. And I will just talk a little bit on this, not too much detail, but it was quite sobering to hear where Australia's at in relation to the road talk. So there's been no real improvements except for the Australian Capital Territory. Every other state or territory in Australia are above the national targets that are being set in terms of deaths, and that's quite disturbing. As is this, 25% of fatalities are attributable to not wearing seatbelts, and that is for people aged 0 to 16 years. Incidences of drug driving are greater than drink driving. There's a growing injury toll, and I've reproduced there the 12 National Road Safety Strategy recommendations for the period 2011 to 2020. I won't read them out, but I'll come back to them very briefly. The new 5-year agreement between TMR and LGAQ was executed. I know Gerard reported on that recently in his departmental report with the committee meeting. Local politics, Mayor Councillor John Wharton made an appeal on behalf of 3 regional road groups for extra funding due to the drought circumstances that impact on those councils from the perspective of sustaining employees and providing a basic level of work opportunity for their plant and fleet, and also to retain local contractors. Mayor Councillor Rick Britton from Booyah Shire Council expressed concern about the withdrawal of the sole inviting status by TMR for reseal works, where DG Neil Scales was quick to respond by reminding delegates that road tech employees are local people too, even though they're carrying out that work that might have once been carried out by councils. The photo on the next page is really concerning. If the trend continues like it is now, between now and 2030, this is what will happen. Over 3,000 people, 3,000 Queenslanders will be killed. 200,000 people, approximately 200,000 people, or Queenslanders will be injured. From a local government perspective, over 1,250 of those people will be killed on Shire roads. And 107,000 approximately Queenslanders will be injured on Shire roads. And the message came through loud and clear that while this is a national problem, it's also a state problem and it's also a local government problem. And there's opportunity for us as a council to show real leadership in this space. The graph below is very hard to read. If you're interested in it, I can make sure you get it so that it's legible, but it talks about the different types of injury burden from those stats. 200,000 Queenslanders and 107,000 of those on local roads. That's between now and 2030. That's the spread of injuries. So opportunities for CHRC, we were encouraged to discuss those 12 recommendations, to consider implementing recommendation 4 and establishing KPIs, which is recommendation 5. And I note that recommendations 8 to 11 inclusive are certainly worthy of consideration as well. So there's probably a strategy workshop just in identifying what it is that we can do to address the road toll. Other opportunities are installing additional safety signage to combat driver fatigue, identifying projects for consideration by the road group through the capability funds that they have custody of, leveraging and strengthening the TAG, the Transport Action Group, by doing a number of things, one of which is addressing the recurrent issues. And some of this one is an example, and it may well be being addressed. But I know for the 5 years I've been here in this role, the Rolleston intersection has been litigated as a problem over and over and over, and there hasn't really been a serious solution put in place. Taking a stance regarding the matter of national standardisation to the degree of offset of signage to minimise night driver fatigue. This is an interesting one, and I won't go into the detail now, but the greater the offset, the lights will splay off rather than reflect back onto the driver. And some of the other states in Queensland have lobbied for a greater offset to reduce fatigue. And there's a lobby group, I can't remember the name, but I heard the story on the ABC radio a little while ago, that's lobbying for a national approach to this rather than a state-by-state approach. So that might be something we could get some facts on and weigh into that argument, maybe put it up as a motion for next year's conference, try and drive change. Support initiatives to educate our young drivers, for example, the RAP program, which is Road Attitudes and Action Planning. Now that's an initiative that's been around for a long time. This is where the Queensland Fire and Rescue Service and the police go into our secondary schools and deliver road safety messages to typically your school leaders, grade 12 students, but also now grades 10, 11 and 12 students. Now that's changed a lot over the last decade, from showing graphic slides of road trauma to lectures about you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, to now a completely different approach. And I've just attended a course on this recently, and the way in which this message is delivered is one through community leadership, by engaging with the youth, the current and the future drivers, by having them understand the impact of road trauma, the ripple effect that it has on your football team, on your relatives, on your schoolmates, and not just your immediate family. And it seeks to engage them in a different way than showing those graphic images. And I'll just mention this very briefly because this is something that has to be requested, it's not imposed. So schools need to make an inquiry to have this delivered in their school, or someone in the community has to have the initiative to suggest that it happen. And it has happened here a lot in the past, but there's room for it to happen more often. So these presentations address the factors that put young drivers at such a high risk, and these are some of the objectives. Less developed visual and perceptual skills, inability to accurately identify and respond to risks and or hazards when driving, overconfidence of our younger drivers, inattention caused by inexperience coping with distractions while driving, a tendency to drive at high risk times, for example at night time with a number of other young people in the car, and alcohol or illicit substances, prescription medication and a combination of those, and deliberate risk taking, example high speed driving and or tailgating. So they're the sorts of things that are spoken about in a positive way to try and encourage people to make better choices. Other opportunities for CHRC are to access some of the existing funding programs, avail ourselves of research. I mentioned there the ARB-RAVRAC, Australian Road Research Board Restricted Access Vehicle Route Assessment Tool, to use that to make better decisions or to target grant applications, and it's a free service for local governments. And explore ROSI, that's Roads of Strategic Importance funding opportunities. And I know that that meeting's recently been held in Brisbane, and we've got some actions to follow up as a result of that. So off the road group assembly and on to conference proper. Mark Jamison, who's the president, opened the conference. Graham Quirk, Right Honourable Lord Mayor of Brisbane City, gave the welcome. And I'll just read this quite seriously. He reminded delegates to make the most of the environment within which local government finds itself, one of scrutiny. He encouraged councils to work together collectively to grow the cake collectively for the sector and the communities that it serves. Councillor Jamison spoke about trust, including the lack of trust in institutions, particularly local government at the moment. He recognised that local government is in the best position to redeem itself and restore trust by communities. This is quite important, considering that the integrity of local government is based on that of individuals. Then, with individual resolve, this shift in restoring trust can happen quite quickly, and that's a very valid point. And I note that the problems within the sector concentrated in the southeast corner, but I'm sure there's problems that exist elsewhere in the state, but it is a good reminder to us all. Likewise, he reminded councillors to make good on the commitments that you made at the 2016 quadrennial elections to ensure that trust is maintained, trust and credibility. So what did we say we would do back in 2016? For further details, his speech is attached, and I do encourage you to read it because it's quite well written and there's some very pertinent comments made in his speech. In relation to financial sustainability, some opportunities for CHRC. I note the first one has been completed. This is unpacking and scrutinising our performance against recent QAA reports. That was the managing local government rates and charges and forecasting long-term sustainability of local government. If you didn't look at those reports, I encourage you to, because they were very open and honest reports that benchmark how we are going compared to the recommendations from our regulator, Queensland Audit Office. So they both appeared in the last Finance and Infrastructure Standing Committee on the 13th of November. And they're good reports because we can see where we're doing really well, where we're on target, or where we need to make some improvements. We then split up to attend the different council forums. Councillor Nixon may make a comment or answer questions in relation to rural and remote councils. The bulk of our reps attended the resources and regional councils, and I had a sticky beat at the large SEQ and coastal councils forum. And key points out of there are listed. It was noted that the last possible date for an election, a federal election, is the 18th of May. Councils want additional road funding and funding reform. There's also a desire for zonal rebates and a better funding model. I've listed the 12 ALGA funding priorities, and you've seen those represented in the graphical form, also included in our 7 for 46 document. The LGAQ approach is they're focused on 8 priorities, with the centrepiece being just 1% to increase the federal assistance grants to 1% of taxation, and they are, and I think wisely, collaborating and working with ALGA, the Australian Local Government Association. On the next couple of pages, I've produced those 8 priorities that the LGAQ are getting behind. So there's been a call to action, and the advice is that we should get our federal reps and candidates to champion our local priorities. We get behind the nationwide push for councils for the funds distributed under FAGs to be increased, and tell our federal reps what difference that extra money can make in our communities. And the resource that's being used or that's available to use is on a website called All Things Political. All Politics is Local. The grants review is quite interesting. Grants will ideally be through 6 streams: security of essential services, safe and efficient road and transport networks, resilient communities, sustainable natural resource management, community wellbeing, and jobs and economic growth. And this is quite pertinent. Looking forward, the most important priorities for the local government sector in the next 12 months. Again, this is from a large council forum perspective. So for that sector, community engagement, encouraging infill development, transitioning next generation neighbourhoods and providing infrastructure for same innovation. An example was Bundaberg Regional Council have produced a 2-page corporate plan, and the link's there if you want to have a look at it. It's punchy. The point is, be innovative, don't produce reams of paper and big reports when you don't need to. Using data, gaining insight into what we don't know. Advocacy, working together, one story with many voices. Refined transport strategies and ensuring rates are sustainable. And the opportunities for CHRC I've already mentioned, and that's about championing that 1% take for FAGs. I'll skip over to Sterling Hinchlife's address, and he said some things around the benefits that the new grants funding methodology will provide, and he also spoke about the current political environment. With the motions, we had a 100% pass rate, and CHRC was involved in quite a few motions, either directly putting them up or putting them up through the Western Queensland Local Government Association or Central Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils. I draw your attention to motion number 5. There was an opportunity for the sector to consider a change to election terms. to respect when the state election is, and also when the Australian government election is. Long story short, as you can see, 166 to 51, it was carried that the status quo be supported. If you can't read that again, I can provide those options to you. And if you flick through that table, our motions are 24 and 25, 45, 48, 51, 59, 63, 67, 74, 80, 90, 96, 99, 103, 106, 107, 109, and they were all supported. So we had a really good result. You can see that we've certainly, as a council, taken advantage of the opportunity to influence the sector. I think that's good. Trade and investment, and this is very relevant. I intend to take this up with CHDC and trying to leverage those overseas opportunities. There's only 1.7% of Queensland businesses currently exporting. That's incredible. The advice was to target investors and not countries. Opportunities for CHRC are obviously to look at our approach and how we can attract international investment, how we can inspire our local business people with case studies that stand out of successful offshore market penetration ventures to stimulate thinking for our local business people and facilitating a new level of economic development. Anne Lay was obviously very researched, a confident and strong speaker, and that last sentence is relevant. What she's saying is that the coalition will support all endeavours to increase bags. They will preserve the Works for Queensland funding model by accepting the grants review recommendations and developing a hybrid model, because there must be some change, I guess, based on redesigning the former royalties for regions funding initiative and using the benefits of the Works for Queensland model. David O'Loughlin, who is the president of the Australian Local Government Association, then spoke about the importance of bags and what they provide for our councils, particularly our small regional and remote councils. In relation to community projects, this is interesting. Only 16 out of the 77 councils in Queensland supplied community projects. So there's Alba in this unique position where they can leverage a new grant funding opportunity for community projects, and they only have 950 potential projects on their list. So out of 550 odd councils in Australia, each council was asked to provide 3 projects. So only up to 950, and I know that would have been something that David would have banged on about at Alice Springs, I'm sure he would have. So there are 3, rightly or wrongly, that were put up back then when we had that opportunity. So hopefully we'll receive some support in time off the back of the Australian government election. And Mr Mayor, that's a real quick version of that report. We'd like the opportunity to go back and revisit some of those areas in more detail, and I do encourage those councillors that I mentioned in the report to either speak up or for councillors to ask them questions about the sections of the conference program that they have. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. And that was very comprehensive.
Just through the Mayor, thanks for that comprehensive report, but hopefully you see Gerard's coming back from other speakers. Put this in the shade. But yeah, just a couple of comments there from the rural and remote councils. I attended that, and that was basically talking about the changing for grants for Works for Queensland and any grants now. The focus will be changing a bit on those grants, and I no doubt we'll be hearing about that later on. I don't think they'll be significant, but they said they will have a different focus, so whatever your focus is. But most of that time there was spent talking drought. Rick Britton had been to Canberra and had put forward a comprehensive story to all the Canberrians down there about how difficult the drought was and how long it had been going for, and really, I think, made a great impact. That was presented again, and then Vaughan Johnson came along and spoke about drought. So it was, we had this talk about the grants and their future, but it was mainly drought and where do the Western Queensland shires go. So I think that, and Councillor Godwin-Smith can talk about the other one.
Yeah, well, thank you for flicking me that one. Effective community leadership, we did the peak training, and I've got to say, I think the consensus of the room was that we were all very disappointed in the training and the content. And I think, you know, Donna Nielsen is a great trainer and a great deliverer of training, but it just fell a long way short for what we were probably expecting. There wouldn't have been any of us who probably learned anything from what she presented. But what we did learn was probably more in the collective wisdom of the participants in the room. So some of the things that were talked about there in terms of leadership and community was the participatory budget model that Southern Downs Regional Council uses. So Mayor Tracy Davey spoke about that. So there's a few conversations that were quite valuable in terms of things that different councils are undertaking that we probably walked away with. And yeah, but we've got to say, like, in all honesty, we were very disappointed. We felt it wasn't a good use of our time that day. And yeah, I don't know if you had anything else you'd like to add there about that?
Yeah, I agree.
Did I? Yeah. Yeah. So that's it.
Councillor, I can say at the individual session I went on sport, it was really about LGAQ engaging with Sport Queensland about probably, and it was a workshop type format, so it engaged councils that were significantly smaller, that had their own sporting facilities either at a school or at a you know, similar to Lockington or Treswell or places like that where there's just a function. So they were actually looking out for Sports Queensland, how to engage better, probably look at going back to the government actually looking at funding more, and obviously just probably around the bigger local government areas where they had significant multi-purpose venues, things like external to that, you know, access, safety, and so there was literally an engagement at various levels, and they were just actually wanting to collect that information, probably come back with a more comprehensive, I suspect, engagement with LGAQ on how they might better fund sporting activities, sporting engagement, encouraging sport in communities of all sizes. And our other session was very much similar to Council mentioned reference. Drought was the buzzword, rightly or wrongly. The responses and a lot of it was around Vaughan Johnson as an envoy or a special advisor. So very much the same. Councillor Roth, yeah.
So Mayor, out at Alice Springs at the Road and Transport, we had a drought session there. It was a good opportunity to gather together councils from across the nation to actually come together and talk about. It's about the criteria for drought nationally and how all the different states have got different criteria, different authorities that sort of thing. So and it's good to see that local government is actually taking a bit of a stance on drought, because it really, from years ago, it hasn't. This is the first time I've seen that the councils and local governments have been actually involved in it. So, David, the ALGA president, is going to take back our points of view and back to the minister and see what we come up with nationally for the drought, which is, I think.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm going to add more to the LGAQ conference. Councillors, there is a recommendation that we received that's got reports from Scott and certainly the verbal reports from other councillors. So is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Godwin-Smith, second Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Yes, thank you.
Tremendous reports.
Yeah, and it's really good.
I wanted to talk to it, but didn't.
Oh, sorry, Megan, you can, yeah.
I've been researching and everything. That's all right. It's only going to ruffle feathers.
Councillors, we've got some closed session items before we do with general business. And can I just, with your indulgence, I've got an email here that Scott handed me earlier that's actually been read to some of the general managers, but
the news is, and it's in from Tidy Towns. So, get a pencil and a piece of paper because this is a long list. Emerald has picked up the award for energy innovation, and Edison's Burger Bar, where they went for lunch, has been awarded the Waste Warrior Award in the business category. Springshaw has picked up the inaugural Destination Award for Destination of Choice to Live, Work and Play, and Capella has been highly commended for heritage and culture. So the awards will be posted this week, and obviously they're going to partner with
Doing it for Dolly.
they're doing it for Dolly, obviously, as we would with Spirit.
Okay.
So star ratings will be provided in the new year. Awards are in the post. But I suspect that's a pretty good strike rate after Blackwater's great result there being awarded the 5-star community as well. So
That's a lot of t-shirts.
that's a lot of t-shirts. But look, certainly I think it's appropriate we acknowledge all the departments that were participated and I guess our unofficial ambassadors who obviously were prepared to show off their respective communities. They did a fantastic job, and clearly by the language in that email from Tidy Towns, they were pretty excited about being here. So congratulations to everyone. And certainly that's not just a pretty town on a single day. It rewards the hard work that people do all year round. So congratulations to everyone, and that's really, really good news.
So in the absence of the star ratings being awarded yet.
Yeah, star ratings will be provided in the new year.
Have they published the full list of awards?
They have been
Have
just,
we it sounds like we've taken out like a big chunk of them, but I don't know. Is it like
Not sure.
everyone's surprised or?
they've been just putting
I was
them
just
out.
taking a glade on this particular email, but I'll tell them.
Yeah, well, on their site, they put out just a couple at a time and said that they would progressively be announcing them, which is a bit different to what they normally do. So, yeah.
Anyhow, look, it's obviously, there's a focus on it, and I think it's just reward for everything.
So Mr. Mayor, do we do media release up about that? Do we wait for the awards? to
And,
get them out?
and that team working on
Ready to go.
Yeah.
Ready to go. Well, and on that cheery note, while we're talking about Andrea, Australia Day nominations, I know it's November, but we get a pretty quiet couple of months leading up to it, so nominations please for your areas and regions if you can think about it. Use your networks to encourage people to obviously make those applications.
I nominate Charlie for taking the no off.
There you go. I thought there'd be lots of good things.
You want to show the camera, mate? Have a look at the camera.
It's clean shaven too.
So council, any other general business before we do the closed session? General business? Going?
Yep, got general business in here. Anyone that was here in the last council would know that I am on about Horacia cactus between the rail crossing and the dam turn-off. Just drive past at 7 o'clock in the morning and you see exactly where they are. After the fire that burned through there a few years ago, they went out and sprayed them and knocked them back, and they're just starting to grow again. So it really needs attention right now.
Nice flower.
Oh, they're pretty flowers, yeah. Yeah, just the playground equipment that's going to come out of the Springshaw Rich Memorial Park. What's going to happen to that? Could that be donated to a local kindy or someone to get benefit from it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure of the condition of it. I'll have to check with the team and see what the plans are for that.
It's pretty good. I think someone would really appreciate it, like a kindy or.
Well, councillor Nixon, just further to that, I have been in contact with Jared, because there were requests from the Ralston community for that to be reused over there, and I was told that it's not in any condition for reuse. So.
The general manager through the mayor's indicated they'll look into it. We've got an asset disposal policy, and if there's a need, we report back to council, we will.
Yeah, it's just a shame if it gets destroyed, and it's really, I don't care if it's got a use by date on it, it's really good condition.
There's some others that have been storage as well.
Yeah, the last lot's still in storage. Now, auction sales, I know when Dave Lacey was on council, we talked about this. Do we have any auction sales locally now for the vehicles and fleet and that?
Yeah, through the mayor, I get the general manager of public services to comment because we are planning another auction soon.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly the planning's in place for an auction either late January or early February at this point in time. We're trying to ensure that we have quality plant equipment available at times as well, so that is a crowd similar to what we had previously. So it's in train for early in the year.
Because it'd be good to get the locals to, have a go at having a look at it if they wish. Yeah, I was just talking about promotions for the rest of it, like promotion for all the things we do. I think that it's nice to promote what we do, like we've got the Sayars, the air hub out there, I think it just to encourage people to utilise the facilities we've got, and not just our own facilities, but our education. And I think it's a good time to give a plug to education now with the new year starting. And we've got so many schools here, and the uni arm and also the Ag College badly needs a little bit of a boost. So I think it just wouldn't hurt for us if we're putting out any kind of news stories before Christmas to kind of just reiterate the fact that we'd like to encourage people to utilise the services and facilities that we've got.
That video that I referred to hasn't been released yet, but that recruitment video actually highlights a lot of facilities in the medical facilities, school facilities, higher education facilities. That would certainly help.
I just think it's an ideal time, an opportunity to get on the move and talking to friends at Christmas.
Okay.
But, yeah, I think the rest I can just shoot through to Jason. Thank you.
All right, councillors.
All right, just in regards to the Blackboard Pool, I just wanted you to report to the next council in regards to its present condition and where we are in regards to retention of funds or closing off that contract.
The DJ liability period.
Yes. I believe there are some people.
Actually, I believe I actually already requested that before.
Mr. Mayor, there is a report in the upcoming reports on for X-Ram.
Good. I can order that, not just that next council meeting.
All good, councillors? All right.
Oh, sorry, just thank council for the opportunity for the trip to the conference last week. It was well worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. All right, well, councillors, we've got 4 matters for closed session, so if someone would like to move, that we can move into closed session. Moved by councillor Godwin, second by councillor Nixon. All in favour? Against? Just a pause.
Just a note before we put that, Mr. Mayor, that will also include subsections 1A
It's my job.
Is it? Sorry.
Sorry.
I'd be redundant.
Just on potential group, if we don't do the first one.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
We're back on, Mark?
Yeah.
All right, councillors. Now, in relation to page 3 of that, the rectification of that matters in relation to that lot number on Range Road, there's a recommendation there. Councillors, are we happy enough to adopt or consider the second part of that recommendation with some wording that might actually look at having council officers continue negotiations with that landowner? So what that will be doing is resolving the rating issue in terms of the rating category.
I think we just go back, discuss something completely different that I thought had been undertaken as to what that acquisition would look like.
We need another report back to council.
Okay, well, I just need something because we've got a recommendation here, and I'll either change it or put it, we'll change it.
I would prefer to have a recommendation considering other options.
What if we say, as a suggestion, Mr Mayor, that council receives the notes of report, requests the CEO undertake further negotiations with the landowner and report back to council.
Sounds good to me.
That sounds good.
Broad, it's broad, very broad.
Yeah, so it'll get back some more information. Happy with that?
Second.
Right, so moved by Councillor McIndoe, seconded Councillor Sypher. Let's get that wording up there. Right, okay, happy with that? So it's been moved and seconded, all in favour? Against? Thank you, councillors. Right.
Rates concession.
Rates concession there, assessment number 795, recommendation there is approve that 50% concession on the general rate and approve that the concession remains in place for the duration of the use of the property as a non-profit sporting organisation.
Just comment.
We've used you up today. So moved by Councillor Ross, seconded Councillor Godwin Smith. All in favour? Thank you very much. Right, and now the final one there is the airport runway project. The recommendation is there, parts 1 and 2. Someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded Councillor Grimmelcone. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Right, and in relation to the other one, and that's just noted.
Received the note.
Yeah, just received the note. Okay.
Do we need to move it?
No, it's just received the note. Right. All right, councillors, I believe there being no further business, I'll declare the meeting closed at 5:21 p.m. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Strategy, are we doing strategy? Are we doing back to strategy?
Well, then we'll start with Dawn.
Daniel can present
I'll
that.
move that we don't.
Reconciliation action.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, please excuse
there's-